And there's Darren. Hey, Darren.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Oh, not bad. Just another day in paradise, right? In the
Oh, yeah.
virtual world, we're doing all right.
How were your tech issues today?
You know what? Early on, it was kind of dicey, but it worked out well. Some of the students were having trouble, but they persevered. They were good. It's shaking off the rust from the holidays now, right? That's the issue with some of the guys. They're half asleep.
Yeah.
But it's all good.
Yeah.
Trying to figure this out.
Are you not at the school, are you?
Yeah, I'm in Blenheim.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to get out of the house, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Was going a bit stir crazy there the last couple of weeks, so it's good to finally get back into the building. I'm the only one here.
Really?
Me, Chris, Jana, and Jen White. So it's quiet, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, it's quiet. I'm at Sir John Moore, and it's super quiet here. There's been a few teachers coming and going and getting things. So I think there's two teachers down the hall that have been using the internet is a problem at people's homes, and like that's why I'm here today, because it's not great at my house, especially when my kids are trying to use it. So
that's part of the reason why I came in too. My wife does quite a few Zoom calls for work as well, so it was tough to navigate between both. She's got some important meetings this week, so I was like, well, I'm usually pretty loud when I teach, so I didn't want to interrupt those important meetings. There was a couple times in the spring where they're like, who's that guy yelling in the background? And my wife's like, yeah, it's just my husband trying to teach. So I was like, I better get the heck out of here.
That's funny.
I'm trying to find that email you sent with the Google Slides.
Oh, I'm going to share the slides.
Okay.
So basically, we're just going to go through, like, there's some prompts, like, for like tech issues, like kind of issues that you had in the very beginning, and what were the common tech issues and how to solve those.
Okay.
What you know, like troubleshooting with kids. And I know there's the student IT, and we shared that yesterday, but kind of just like some common problems that occurred. And then engaging students and how to like promote like them to keep their cameras on, and what you guys have done with respect to that. Jennifer's here too, so she'll help answer those questions.
Okay.
We've got a few things that Melissa Dent had shared with Denise for like engagement activities. So we're going to share some of those things. Okay. And yeah, so just sharing, like just adding in, because both of you have the experience. So sharing what's going to help make their lives easier.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. It's 3, so we may as well just get started. I feel like there'll be people popping in and out. It probably won't be consistent. I was in a few other sessions, and that's kind of what was happening. So I am just gonna go to the slide deck for today. Yep, that's ours. Okay. So this or that, pizza or spaghetti, you can say it in out loud, or if you can type it in the chat if you'd like. I'm gonna say mine out loud. I would go with pizza. I have to go.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta go pizza. Gotta go pizza.
Depending on the kind of pizza, I suppose. Like I really like Pizza Hut pizza.
Pizza Hut?
Yeah, like the fluffiness of the crust. It's just, I don't know. It's almost like bread.
Yeah.
I think that's why I like it.
We had a pizzeria growing up, so I was spoiled with lots of pizza.
Pizzeria?
Yeah. Riverside Pizzeria was our family pizzeria.
Really?
Yeah. The one on London Road with the spinning hand, if you remember.
Yeah.
Had a pizza. Yeah, that was our family restaurant.
Was it called Riverside?
Riverside, yeah.
I'm picturing Mother's.
Yeah.
There are Mother's too?
No, there was a Mother's. We were and we had a place there was one in Point Edward and one on London Road.
Where at on London Road?
Right across from where Eastside Mario's is now.
Oh, okay. Nice. That would have been great.
It was spoiled, yeah. My Mountain Dew Pop and my sauce pizza. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I see some notes in the chat. And so you've got the chat open so that you can respond to questions. So we're just going to keep it open today, that if you have any questions, just please type them in the chat and we'll get started. Yeah. So this is the 5-6 session. Welcome. But if you're not 5-6, you're more than welcome to join because I feel like it's pretty general, applies to everybody.
Okay, we acknowledge that the land on which we are connecting through is part of the Chippewa, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Delaware nations. Yay.
Okay, so what we're going to focus on, we're going to get our experienced online teachers who are joining us today to help us with these things that we've listed here for our outline. So we're going to talk about building a classroom community, which is nice because you all have, everybody who's in the going from bricks and mortar already has that developed, but how to keep it going with a remote class and the things that need to happen so that it's functionable and doesn't cause a problem. And then increase engagement with cameras on, even though cameras are not required. How can we promote that so they'll independently do that? And then talking about welcoming ideas for the beginning of the class and using timers, and then connection issues and questions. See if I can change the slide. So we have Jennifer Gagne and Darren Hebert. They've been teaching in the virtual school since September. And Jennifer was with us yesterday and shared so many ideas. And so I'm really looking forward to what they have to share with us today.
So building on online community, we want to find simple ways to connect, set clear expectations, teach students how to use the Meet features, which seems simple enough, but sometimes just showing them where things are can be very helpful. And these can mean the difference between promoting engagement or disengagement.
Right. And so first, starting with that simple ways to connect. So maybe Jennifer and Darren can share some things that they do, just to support creating relationships in the class, not the technical stuff, but the how are you keeping kids involved and talking to each other. And can you comment on that? What kind of things are you doing? I noticed I was in your class, Darren, and I did see you doing some of those things to start off the class. And so maybe sharing some of those things that you do.
Yeah, so we normally do bell ringer work in the morning where we'll put a question up just to kind of see who's engaged in the lessons. So it's tough, right? Because normally in the classroom you'd have people come in and normally I'd have my smart board up and have Toronto Maple Leafs or Montreal Canadiens, right? And they go and put their name beside. So trying to find ways to do that online has been a little bit different. So what I've done is I do a bell ringer journal where I post that on Google Classroom, and the students will go and do that. Or I'll have a question up on a Google slide, and they'll go and they'll just type in the chat, would you rather, go to the moon or go to Atlantis or whatever, right? And they'll put in the chat that, and then it's kind of builds that that discussion piece in the morning, gets kids familiar with using the chat and using their different features, because there's a hand raise feature now where they can put their hand up and answer those questions and stuff like that, and just try to be more inviting, I guess, to the students that are coming online, and just making sure that they're okay too, kind of doing that check-in and making sure those students are comfortable with the technology. Kind of it's like a thumbs up to know that they're okay and they're online and they're paying attention for the most part. So yeah.
So when you're saying doing the thumbs up, so you might give a question that's a general for everybody, and it's either a yes or a no kind of thing, and so then they'll respond with their thumbs up.
Yeah, so there's a way, I don't know if they can do it on a Chromebook too, but it's there's the Windows button on a laptop. They can get the emojis to come up in Google Meet, so they can do that. Or I'll either give them put a Y for yes or an N for no, right? Stuff like that, just small little codes that they can do to do that. So, and these are all things that I've learned from September until December, right? Until the break. It's taken a long time. So this hasn't just happened overnight. We're learning stuff every day out here to make sure we can connect with students. So sorry, I just saw the chat come up.
Yeah.
It's distracted. It's like squirrel. Do you have any good?
The question was, do you have any good sites for would you rather? Do you have any good sites for would you rather or for math prompts?
Or provoking math prompts? So we've gone through a few different sites online, and like I say, every day, every week's kind of different. We kind of have teamed up with the other grade 5, 6 teachers online here. So a lot of times I'll work with my colleagues out here. We've been here since September in the Blenheim site, so we've been kind of bouncing ideas. So we've gone through a few different sites. Nearpod's one of them. We used what was the one that Steph Wood sent to us? I forget, it's like not Mathletics. I'll have to find it. I'll have to dig it up. But Nearpod's been one that we've used where it's can be self-directed, and it syncs up with Google Classroom as well. So you can get different lessons, whether it's geometry, whether it's data management, things like that, and they can go through. So it's spelled. I'll type it in the chat. It's spelled Nearpod, and it's a free account where you can go on and you can get like live lessons, and you can even build your own lessons too. So that's one that we've had a lot of success with. Um, Other things, just using like Jamboards, thinking outside the box and just using like a Jamboard and pushing that to all the students. And they have a question where they can work on independently, and you can work through it with them by presenting it on your screen, and they'll still have access to that. One hurdle we found is that the different technologies that the students are using, it's tough, right? When some kids are using an iPad, some kids are using a Chromebook, some kids might be using a phone at home, right? Because they don't have access to it. So those things are challenging. And one thing we've learned is that you can only go as fast as kind of the back of the pack, right? Because you're going to have kids that zip through stuff, and you're going to have kids that struggle, and you need to kind of rein those guys ahead that are ahead back and say, okay, we're going to work through this as a group. And we kind of scaffold those lessons, and then during that asynchronous time, that's when you kind of let the reins go and say, okay, guys, go and go and do your thing online. Because I know Trevor's jumped into Whiteboard FI is another one that we've used too. And we've all learned these things, kind of been baptized by fire, just kind of going and messing around with these apps. So I know Trev can probably speak to this as well, but Whiteboard FI is a way where you can show like a problem or show a picture online, and everybody has like their own virtual whiteboard where they can go and write their answer down too. So you can have that engagement with the students as well. You can see everybody's whiteboard.
Yeah, it is tricky because like I know I've talked to you and other 5, 6 teachers in the virtual, and the one challenge is like the different applications that there are, and then the students having to learn a new one, and then that gets complicated, right? So it's like pick one that you're going to use and then use that one kind of thing is
Yeah,
what
like
I've heard from you guys, I think.
a lot of it's been like trial and error. So like we'll use Whiteboard FI, like we use that for probably like a month, and then we're like, okay, is there one that's better? So we try a different one, and then we go back to the other one and kind of like bounce back and forth. Like there's no one app that actually is able to reach every student, which is difficult to say as as an educator. It's like I want to reach every student, but unfortunately sometimes it's not going to work for those students. So you have to go back to the pen and paper, right? Like if you're especially on Whiteboard FI, sometimes it doesn't work. So that's why we've all gotten like whiteboards here, or we'll tell the students to get a pen and paper, and then if we make an assignment online, we'll say, okay, try to take a picture of it with your iPad and then hand it in so we can see what they've done, right? To kind of have that that evidence that they participated in it, right? So, but Whiteboard FI is awesome, and so like Jamboard's awesome too, right? Because they all have access to it. With the iPads, they've all, like the students with the iPads have had to download the app for it on their iPad because it doesn't really work through the Google browser. But it's a great app too. But the Nearpod thing's been pretty cool too. If you want to mess around with that, it's pretty neat as well, and it syncs up with Google Classroom, so it's been pretty cool.
I know Jennifer was talking a little bit about this yesterday. And Jennifer, what are your thoughts? Do you want to add any to that? Oh, you're on mute.
For the math talks, we use Estimation 180 a lot. The kids really like Estimation 180. I think because each one builds on the next, and they need the visual prompts. So if I try to do a math talk without a visual, it does not go as well.
I can't hear Jennifer.
It shouldn't be muted. My volume's at maximum, so I'll try to speak louder.
Yeah, I can hear you now, Jen.
I just have to lean closer to this. I don't know why the kids don't have that problem with the Google Meet, but this one seems to do that.
Yeah.
I use Estimation 180 and I use Math Before Bed. the kids tend to need the visuals to get them. And then I have my chat closed a lot because I have 2 or 3 students that still have a hard time not posting emojis and things in the chat. So I will open the chat when we are watching, when we're doing an estimation 180, or when we're doing a virtual field trip, or when I've asked them to make comments on what I'm reading to them. And other times I keep the chat shut. I do find that the breakout rooms are a big benefit for getting them sharing, because they are able to choose the room that works for them, and they're in smaller groups. When you have 26 or 28 students all on the screen, some are just too shy to share. Whereas if I can break them up or give them the option, then I will get more community feeling from them, because they're more willing to talk to each other in a smaller group.
Mhm.
Is estimation one, oh, sorry, Jennifer, just a question in the chat, just question marks beside the estimation 180 and Math Before Bed. Are they apps? Are they websites? Are they?
They're free websites, and the Math Before Bed, you go in and you choose. But the big thing with the Math Before Bed is it teaches them that there's not a correct answer. So for example, there'll be a puzzle with a piece missing, and it'll say how many pieces. Well, it doesn't say how many missing pieces, or how many pieces should there be, or how many pieces are there. So each student can, somebody will say, well, there's, the answer is 2. And they say, because there are 2 pieces missing. And somebody else will say, well, the answer is 50, because there's supposed to be 50 pieces altogether. And somebody else will say, well, there's 48 because I'm missing 2. And so it teaches them and gets them talking that there's no correct answer. So I think that works well for them. The estimation 180 starts with measurement, and then they're comparing heights and comparing amounts. So they use what they know as they go. So that tends to be, gets them talking about it, because once again, in the chat, they're putting down their different answers, and then they'll say, oh, I thought it was asking this, or I thought that. And I find that helps a bit. I do find the camera is very difficult with my crew. Some of them, their parents don't want the cameras on because they don't want us seeing into the house. Sometimes it causes too many glitches on their Wi-Fi. So the cameras have been a bit of an issue to encourage because of various reasons. So I don't worry about the camera too much, except when I'll say, we're going to do phys ed and I need to see you doing phys ed today, and they turn them on. But I find that they will turn them off and on throughout the day, depending on what they're doing. So
Jennifer, there was one thing I seen when I was in your class, and it was like a random roll call, because if the cameras are off, you can't really tell if the kids are there and if they're listening. And so you did this random, can you tell them about it, what you do?
Yeah, I know some of the kids that will sort of disappear off. And so I will just call their names in the morning for attendance. I do attendance while they're doing read works, and I've assigned different groups because I do have students on IEPs, and I have an ESL student. So I do have different groups, and some have audio, some don't, some are different grades. So they do that. But during the day later, I like to just call their names to make sure that they're still there. And I'll say, oh, I'm going to come back to you because you didn't answer. And they know too that I will call parents, because I'll call just to make sure the Wi-Fi is, and I'll just say, they haven't been answering. I'm not sure if their mic is working or they can't hear me. And usually the parents will then double check with them and make sure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. And sometimes sometimes it's a Wi-Fi issue, and sometimes they've gone off to do Minecraft education instead of whatever we're working on.
Has
Derek,
any
you
of
have something to say about that?
oh, there's a question.
I agree with Jennifer though about the cameras. That was a kind of a struggle at first for us out here in the south too. We were struggling to kind of have all the students have their cameras on. There was like glitches with internet. There was issues with just technology and students not being able to do that, and also the comfortability of them turning their camera on too. So like Jennifer, we don't really worry about that too much as well, because there's other ways to find out if they're being engaged in the lessons as well, like through the chat and through different activities. And so I agree with Jennifer on that too. And Christine said, I did a Kahoot with my kids today. So we've done Kahoots a little bit out here. And one suggestion would be make sure that all those students that are signing up when they're putting their name in, that you can actually, it's like a proper name instead of like a nickname. That way you know which one, like just like in school, right? You want to know, just like in face-to-face, you want to know who's there, right? So just the emphasis on that, that way you know who's there. We've had it crash a couple times on us where we just had to reload it a couple times, but we've had those students stay in the meet until they're in the Kahoot, and some of them have to leave because they're on iPads or on different devices. So that's the only suggestion I really have there. But
Yeah.
it's been good. It's been a success though. Kahoots work really well with this too. So
I had to, like, I had to do it via sharing my screen, and then they couldn't read the question. So I'd have to read the question and then quickly like color code the answer. So I'd say, you know, like blue and give the number, red, give the number. And then they quickly click the answer because they, for whatever reason, they couldn't see it. It worked. Like, I mean, as I said, we muddled through it and it worked, but I just didn't know if there was an easier, or if I was doing something wrong, for is one of those tech issues that everyone else was having today.
Sometimes I found that I just present my screen because I use two screens. So I'll present my screen separately so that they can see it off my screen if their screen isn't working. So sometimes that's sort of a workaround, that if they can't see the colors or see the questions, then at least they can see it on my screen. So then they know a little bit more. So sometimes that will help.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. And then just going back, I had some kids, going back to the screen thing. I had some kids, you know, they would be logged in and then you could see their little, you know, avatar, whatever you call them, not their face, but then they, you know, that they weren't even engaged or they weren't even there. And then, you know, so I guess there's a new term, new to me anyway, ghosting. And so, and then they would, you know, they're texting or on Google Hangouts with someone else. And then, you know, I'd say, oh, has so-and-so seen so-and-so or talked to them? They're like, oh yeah, she's, you know, texting so-and-so right now type thing. So they're logged in with me, but off in their own world doing something else. So I mentioned it to my principal and he's like, yeah, I guess it's called ghosting. So I don't know, how do you prevent that, but.
yeah, that's been something that we've battled through as well. And one thing we've done, and one thing that's worked really well, is have them log out during the break times.
Okay.
So we've had them log out, like, so the morning block, I'll say to my students, okay, guys, log out and go outside and take a break, and then have them log back in. And then you know if they're not there because they haven't logged out yet, right? And I just make a note. And then
Yeah.
it'll be, if it happens more than one time in a day, that's a phone call home. Unfortunately, like, not unfortunately, but it's good to have the parents in contact and understand what they're doing online too. But
Yeah.
like, I've had to send 3 emails today, right? Because there's students that haven't been engaged in the lessons. So it's just one of those things where I think by reaching out to those parents too, it builds a better communication line, right? With, especially in the online world, because there's a lot of stuff that parents don't know about either, right? I had a student who was handing stuff in, just turning it in, and then we had to make phone calls and say, hey, all the work that he's handed in, it hasn't been done.
Yes. Yeah.
On the parents' end, it looks like they've turned it in, right? And they have no idea. So yeah, it's one of those ghosts, right? We got to be the
Yeah.
Ghostbusters crew, I guess, and try to figure that out. But it's yeah, it's been something that we struggled with too, from September until now. So we're still trying to figure those things out.
So just to ask, so we were told to take attendance at 12, but like that was kind of in the middle of one of my lessons. So I did the attendance because we were asked to, but then our break was at 12:50. So then they, you know, break, and then like a couple of them didn't come back, but they've already been marked present type thing. So again, that's where, and again, our principal is like, you know, don't worry about it for this week type thing, just mark everyone present type thing. So I'm like, okay. But again, do I reach out to those parents, or do I, you know, wait till next week to see what we're actually doing? Or what do I do?
I usually look to see if there's a trend. If there's a trend of them missing, because sometimes, like today, especially with the Wi-Fi, I had a couple students that are always there, always wanting to participate, and they didn't show back up at one point. But I knew that there could be Wi-Fi issues with those students. So they showed up later, and then they came back for the beginning of asynchronous time so that I could catch them up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's worth letting it go for just saying, I noticed you disappeared. Did you have a problem yesterday? And then they know you were aware of it.
Yeah.
Do finish up time, which I used to do in a traditional classroom anyway. So on Friday, they know that there's a block of time when they may get to do code.org, or they may get to do the Minecraft education, but they have to have their other work completed. And just like with Darren, I know there's certain students that will sometimes hand things in blank, and
Mhm.
I just check theirs beforehand, and I'll say, okay, you 5 have to work on this, and you 6 are working on this, but your little group, you have everything done, so you guys can go to one of the breakout rooms and go on Minecraft edu or or the code.org, and that way I keep the ones that aren't finished with me. So sometimes that helps because they don't want to be the ones missing out on that time.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I just think it's like kind of a tricky situation we're in because the government has announced that we're going back to class next week. And however, that could change. And also your cohort could be sent out because somebody is tested positive. And so you're going to be teaching for 2 weeks from online. So notice how we have the set the clear expectations in here. I think you're going to have to balance with how you're trying to manage your class, because having those clear expectations, like I think it's really important how Jennifer and Darren had followed up with the parents and let them know when your students are learning online, like you're relying a lot on the parents and their support. And so letting students know that if they're not going to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, then there is going to be a phone call home. And like sometimes I wonder, like if you wait on that, then it sets you up for dealing with more problems later. But if you get on it right away, then you can, you know, get the message out to the kids that like, no, like this is what we're doing and you're going to be expected. But this week it's, you know, everybody's getting used to it. So I wouldn't put too much worry right now, but
Yeah.
like here for sure I would, because I would want them to know, like if we're learning online and you've signed up for the online live and you know that's what's going to be happening and we're expected to actually teach something, it's not just review, then you know that can get you into, you know, some problems later. So just keeping that in mind if we do go to more learning online, I think something.
Thanks.
What are some clear expectations that in September you really wanted to make sure students were aware of, like, or maybe that you wished you had pushed a little bit more?
I think from the get-go, right, you want to establish a classroom community that's respectful, though, just like being in the classroom, right? The expectations there is like when somebody else is talking, you're listening, right? It's a little different online, right? So it's important. We kind of went through the mute unmute thing with the students for the first week, and then the camera on, camera off. So I tried to establish like when a student's talking, they turn their camera on, and that's when we kind of started to get into like that kid's camera didn't work. You know, this guy's on an iPad or this guy's on a Chromebook, that, you know, whatever issue it was. So it was kind of fluid, right? It was always changing, but some of the things that we did automatically was, you know, when I'm speaking, you guys are muted. When I'm sharing my screen, right? When I'm asking questions, please put it in the chat. And now there's the hand raise feature, so they can raise their hand if they have a question. So that's one thing, like the last 3 weeks of December that it was added to Google Meet. So we were able to kind of develop that. So when somebody's talking over another person, I'll stop and I'll say, okay, guys, somebody else is speaking, and then we'll get to you in a second. So it's just like being in the classroom, right? And trying to develop those expectations that when somebody else is speaking, you don't interrupt somebody else and then go back. Like it might take a couple extra minutes to figure out, but when you see everybody's hand, and it's easy to say, okay, Johnny goes first, and then, you know, Sally goes next, whatever, right? So doing that, and also the chat, right? The chat was a big thing at first, where students were just kind of putting in silly things, and then establishing that the chats for asking questions and answering questions, because it moves fast, right? If a student's answering a question, trying to watch the screen and then watch the chat, it's a lot going on at once. So making sure that we're trying to, you know, make sure that that chat's for what you're talking about at that time, or if somebody has a question, now I guess they can raise their hand, but before it was, okay, this thing's constantly moving, and you got to scroll up to kind of see what, you know, what Johnny said, and then you have to go back and say, okay, Johnny, here's the answer to your question, and then scroll back down. But I think you can mute kids from chatting too. The one thing that we ran into early too, and Jennifer, I don't know if you ran into this either, but when you make your Google Meet, the first person in gets host controls. So the biggest thing is when, like, I know some of my colleagues out here had that problem when students were logging in before them, the students could mute other people. but the teacher couldn't. So it's important that you're there first and the student, then you post it and the students come in afterwards, because you being the first person in the chat gives you host controls. So you can mute, you can remove students. So if a student's being, unruly, or they're, doing something they shouldn't be doing, you can remove them from your Google Meet and they can't get back in for the day. And then it resets overnight and then they can get back in the next day, or you can invite them back into it. So we've had to remove kids from I've had to remove kids from my class for saying inappropriate things in the chat. It's just the way, no different than being at school, right? If they're, making the classroom an unsafe environment, they need to, be removed, right? But it's one of those things where those host controls are make or break some days.
Darren, I just have a question about the difference. So if you create in Calendar, the Google Meet and link in Calendar, that gives you host controls. But
Yes.
if the one
Yeah.
on,
Sorry, go ahead, Sally.
can you explain that to everybody? Because I'm not certain on it, and I think it's something important, and I
So
know.
now, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong on this. If you create, because I made a Google group at first and I invited all my students that were on my roster. So it would go into all of their calendars. So if they ever got kicked out of the calendar or out of the Meet, they could go back into their Google Calendar and click on that and join it again. But if you create it through Google Classroom, I'm not sure how that works because I haven't done that yet. I did mine differently than everybody else did out here, but I made mine so whenever I log in, I always have host controls because I'm the owner of that Meet link. And I think it's the same thing if you create it through the calendar. As long as you're the owner, I think if you're in first, then students won't have host controls. I think that's how that works.
I have mine set up through my calendar, and even though I allow my students to sign on early. Some of them get up at 5:36 in the morning, but they really need to socialize. So they will sign on, but I always have control because I created the meets in my calendar. So even if I'm the last one, like today with the internet, at one point I got kicked out of the meet, but when I came back in, I still have control of the meet because I created it. So, so that's
that has to happen through Calendar.
I set it in Google Calendar, and I have a repeating, like it shows up Monday through Friday, the same Meet link every day, every week. And then all I did over the Christmas break was deleted those particular days. But if I'm in the Meet, I control it. It doesn't matter when I access the Meet because I set them up through Calendar. The other way is the problem, and that was a big issue in September. And so every day I was creating a new Meet link because if they used the old one, then if I wasn't the first one in, then they controlled the Meet. And that was a problem. But doing it through Calendar gets around that issue.
Right.
There's sorry, just in the chat, Jana was asking.
Okay, so
yeah.
So if you're not the first person on, you can't mute the other students. So you're still a participant in the Meet. You can still share your screen and everything like that. But if there's a student that forgets to turn their microphone off, and in the background they're they might be humming or talking to a sibling or answering mom or dad, whoever they're talking to, you won't be able to mute that person. So if you have host controls, you can mute somebody, but you can't unmute somebody. And I think that's universal, right? You can't unmute somebody, which is fine. But they'll just have to unmute themselves. But so you won't be able to mute anybody, and you wouldn't be able to remove anybody. So say we've had the issue before where another student has jumped into a Meet because we might have shared classes and tried to collaborate with another grade 6 class, and another student is in our Meet and they might be talking in the chat or asking questions in the chat to another student from their old school, and we just had to remove them from the Meet, right? Because there's no other way to do that if you don't have host controls.
And if you do remove them, you have to invite them back in. So
right.
If you have a student that has been inappropriate and you've said, I'm removing you now and you can come back after lunch, you actually have to invite them again or they cannot get back in. They're permanently removed unless you re-invite them. So I've even had to invite some students who their Wi-Fi did something while they were on it and kick them out. And then earlier on, I would get a remind message from a parent saying, we can't get back in. And so I had to send them an invite and say, just once I send the invite, then you can get back in. But we weren't aware that that was happening.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we were talking about no cameras required, and that you both have highlighted the reasons why. So thank you. Teresa was going to talk about, she created a slide here about some ways to increase engagement, like hopefully promote turning the camera on, and then maybe you might have something to add to it if possible.
Yeah, again,
Okay.
our guests are the experts here. I just kind of Googled some ideas and asked some other virtual teachers what they do. And just one suggestion was like a student survey through Google Forms, just asking maybe why you can't use your camera. I mean, there's many reasons, bandwidth, whatever. Maybe there's, whatever their situation is. So some ideas was to use some icebreakers like within reach, which was all, they said have a list ahead of time and then give the kids like a minute to like find those things. And then whoever has the most wins, like pass the pen. That's more with the camera on, kind of like the Brady Bunch, where you pass the pen up or down side and they have to grab it. Play games, rock, paper, scissors, Pictionary, charades, and then the virtual votes. Darren was talking about this, like a thumbs up. And then I found this fist to 5. And then on the corner there, you can see if they have their hand up, they completely understand. And if they have their fist closed, they don't understand, and everything in between. So these were just some ideas maybe you can use throughout the week, or if you go into a lockdown or whatever the situation may be. These are just some ideas you may want to try, use, who knows, whatever works for you in your class.
I like that fist to 5, and like, because when you're teaching a lesson, you don't really know, right? You can't, it's when you're
Right.
not in person, you can't read. So if you can just do a quick check-in and have them show their understanding, gives you a quick at a glance, like, and if they can't show their cameras, then they could type in a 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. Yeah.
Just to add to that, sometimes they just don't want their face on the camera, or they're wearing their pajamas still. And so sometimes I'll say, okay, I don't need to see you. I just need to see your hand. So they'll have their screen tipped, and it's just so I can see their hand, so that it's like, okay, everyone gives me a thumbs up, but they don't have to do it in front of them. So some of them are more comfortable with that, and that you still know they're there.
Right. It's like you said earlier, Jennifer, the check-in, right? You want to make sure, like you do that roll call. I think that's a great idea too, just to make sure they're still kind of paying attention.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll just say, because they'll have a question, I'll say, does anyone else have the answer to that? Or I'll say, I'm not on my iPad, it's not charged right now. Who can answer that question? And then some of them will turn their camera on to try to help each other, which of course they don't, they think they're helping each other. It's not like I'm checking in on them. So it's different from their point of view.
Yeah. I've got another one there. There's another would you rather, or like a this or that. So in the session notes, there's a slide deck that was shared by Melissa Dent and Denise Ladd that has a whole bunch of these. And all you got to do is just copy and paste it into your slides, and it's that simple. And that could be like a starter, getting kids connected, getting them sharing, getting them comfortable sharing their voices on the live meet.
This one's hilarious to me. I just think it's so funny. The chips.
I think I would go with chocolate.
I think I'm chip. I don't know.
Chocolate chips.
Both.
Have you ever had
Can I
chocolate
pick both?
Sally, something that Melissa shared in the grade 7-8 mission was that for these activities, they actually said, like, if it were chocolate, cameras on, and if it were like the chips, cameras off.
Oh, that's
And
fun.
so that's another way as well. So I thought that was kind of a neat way just to engage the kids with getting their cameras turned on and off. Is like option A is cameras on, option B is cameras off.
Well, that's a good idea.
Great idea.
Yeah.
And so like Teresa just mentioned, like even just like doing the Brady Bunch wave, and like it's kind of neat, that idea of the passing the pen that you were talking about, like, or passing an object, like, so if we were in grid view, like the Brady Bunch is right now, just passing something and then somebody else picks it up, probably might not be the same thing, but anything they have like at their hand that they can pass through the screen and down or across or up, it's kind of fun just to get them to be comfortable and sharing. Some other connecting ideas. Oh, sorry, no, I gotta escape out of here. So this slide. So this is also going to be in the session notes. You can see there's like tons here of ideas for connecting. I don't know, Darren and Jennifer, if you've seen this already, if Melissa's shared it with you, but I don't know where they got it, but there's lots of fun things on here that you could just take and use right away, like joke time, getting them to starting with sharing a joke. This caption is hilarious. This monkey's taking a selfie with this group of people. Just a whole bunch of different things in here that I actually started exploring this one while I was waiting for the session to start. There's some neat things in there. So that's going to be in session notes, just something to engage your students with.
One of the things I do every morning too, to start off, I do a tech tip of the day. So I figured like we're going to be doing this all year, right? So one of the things I do is I'll just have a tech tip, and I go through my reminders. Like I can show you guys what my day plan looks like each day, but I start off with like the date, and I just say, good morning, and have kids sign in, and then I go through my reminder checklist. So I say like, if things don't work out, it's okay. Like we're going to get through it. And then just those constant reminders that if something goes wrong, it doesn't need to be a freak out, right? Like the first week of school, it was like we're tech guys, right? Tech support, and which was a good learning experience for me as well, because I had no idea that these issues were going to be so prevalent all year, right? But we've worked through it, and I think the kids understand that if something goes wrong, it's okay, right? Like it's not the end of the world. We're going to be able to get through this together. So we go through that, and then I've developed a series of tech tips that I've loaded to my Google Classroom and under the materials part, and it's like how to use Google Documents, how to use Google Slides, how to use Jamboard. There's little like 5-minute videos that you can find on YouTube that you just grab the link and then add it in as a material, and the kids go back and reference if they need help with a Google document or a Google form or anything like that. It's all under there. So that's one thing that I started to do every day, is give a tech tip in the morning. So especially if it's something that we're going to do that day, like if we're going to do a Google slideshow, if they're going to make a slideshow for a project, I'll go through and say, okay, we're going to add how to add a video to a Google slide, right? Some kids might know it already, other kids might not. So it's one of those things that I've started to do every day, and it helps me out too, because like at the beginning of this, like I had no idea how to do half the stuff, like put in GIFs or GIFs, whatever you call them, into a slide, and we do this stuff every day. So it's kind of like the baptism by fire, but the more you do it, the better you get at it, right? So
Darren, could you share the tech tips with us? Like send me the email, and then I could share it with like the session.
I think it's actually in so it's on my classroom. I think you have access to my classroom, but I'll try to figure out a way to send it to you. Okay.
And then I like how you said that you would go through the day plan with us. Do you mind you're coming tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'll come back tomorrow for sure.
Can you do that tomorrow with us then? Like show how you prep it in the slide deck and like all the things you kind of do in a day? That would be really useful.
For sure.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Awesome.
I can show it right now for these guys too, if you want. And if they don't want to come back tomorrow, I can do that right now too.
Well, you know what? We have some questions that were asked that we haven't gotten, like tech questions.
Okay.
So maybe, and this is all recorded. So if they can't come tomorrow, they can watch the recording that'll be posted on the blog.
Okay.
So here's one other one. It's the sign off question, and it has a whole bunch of fun things in it too. So that will be in the session's show notes. So I'm just gonna close those ones out. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the slide for a second because this was an issue. So the connection issues, I know there was a lot of issues today that came up. And so I thought maybe like we were given some questions yesterday. So I thought we could get to those questions after, because I know there's people here that have had some tech issues, and you two have like so much experience with all of this. So maybe we could get to their tech glitchy issues. And then we could go to the questions that were asked from yesterday that didn't get resolved, and they're partially resolved today. And we're hoping you have more to add to them. So while if you want to just come on and use your voice to ask a question, or if you want to write it in the chat, we'll give you a minute here. While we're waiting, I'll tell you about this picture. The virtual school did a mascot. What could the mascot be for the virtual school? And so I looked through their slide deck, and this was one of them. I thought it was like so genius of a kid to like create an alien that's called a glitch, because that first month was just filled with glitches and problems. And I feel like this should have been the mascot. That was my vote. So no questions in the chat? Anybody want to come on? Like the tech issues were crazy today. I was hearing about them like mad. everything was shutting down and like people were getting the Google Suites. There were tons of issues with Google Suites, but then on top of that, the Cogeco like was out for the like morning. I think it's back on now. I heard my son we have Cogeco and my son said it's back on at our house. So hopefully for everybody else.
Southwestern Ontario. So it wasn't
Yeah.
just our, yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so no questions yet. So let's go to the questions that were from yesterday. And then if anybody wants to ask, just go ahead and interrupt us. So from yesterday, the Google Classroom Meet link. So Jennifer, this was the question that was asked by Jennifer Lotta yesterday at the end of the session. And it was a problem with, she wanted to use calendar Meet link. Is that correct, Jennifer? And she wanted it to.
She wanted to set it up on her calendar so she would always control it, but she wanted to use the link code that had been generated by her Google Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was trying to copy them in, it wasn't accepting it. It was saying that it wasn't a real Meet. But the solution was that she actually has to go into the Meet and copy the code from there, because otherwise it doesn't show up exactly the same way and it won't be acceptable.
Can I show that video that you created for us or for her yesterday?
Yep, that's fine.
And then hopefully it works here. Actually, no, I already have it queued up here. Okay. Hopefully you can hear it, because this was another question.
Google Meet from your classroom into your calendar so you can reuse it and post it that way. You actually have to open this link first.
It's not,
Sorry?
it wasn't the video yet. Go ahead.
Sorry, still you have to listen. Like I have my volume up as high as I can go. So
So you turn these off and join the meeting.
you actually have to join the Meet
there.
to get the link. Is that what you're showing us here?
And close this.
Yeah, because if you try to copy it from the other one, you think that's the Meet link, but it will not accept it. You have to get it from inside the Meet.
This joining information with this
For some reason, it's not the same as the one that's on the top of your Google Classroom. You think it would be, but it won't accept it from there. It'll only accept it once you're actually in the Meet and you copy it from there, then you can add it to your calendar. So then when you create your Meet that you're gonna, like I have, you can see mine that I have like 4 every day because I have their quiet room and their breakout rooms. So you create it, but then when you add the Google Meet, you have to go in and edit that to change it to the code that you've just copied from the one you want to be using every day.
conference detail.
And then it won't be a problem.
Edit the meeting
But
ID.
what she was having here is it kept saying this is not a valid Meet code. So you have to use that one. You have to use the one from inside the Meet, it seems. Otherwise, you will not get that green check mark
Check marks on
and it will not save it properly.
So I wonder if
So
she'll
now
actually
it's
have host
created
controls
that
if she
new
does it
meeting.
that
You
way.
can see it up here.
You should, because I have host controls through mine, but I created them in Calendar and I don't use the one from Classroom.
Yeah, and she's wanted to take
As well, easier, and you created your own.
That meeting.
Because I wanted to make sure I was always in control of it. But then you can see here that I'm in the Meet and then I'm joining it again. So that seemed to be the way to work around that. Although with the Google issues today, who knows whether it was working properly.
Yeah. So I guess the other option is if that's not working, we discussed this yesterday, was that creating the link in your calendar and then posting it under Classroom, under Meet links, or you could also do it under the stream. But if you do this, like creating a topic, then you can just have like all the Meet links right there and accessible. So that's one option, and it would look like this for the students. They click on that one and then they just got to click the link to go to it. So I guess if it doesn't work out in the end, like that thing that you suggested, if it's not working for her, then I guess that's the other option.
This is the way you just showed it is how I have it set up on mine. It's at the top of the page. It's the same every day, but because it comes from my calendar, I'm always in charge of it. No matter if I get kicked out like today or not, I still come back in and I'm still in charge.
Yeah. So another question we had was around video sound in the Google Meet. So a few people actually, it's come across to a bunch of coaches, like they're playing a video that's either like from YouTube or it's embedded in their slides and the sound the sound's not working for the students, but it is, they can hear it, but the students can't hear it. And so we kind of like, I thought I'd like, so this is what I pulled together, but maybe you guys can add to it. So this is when you're in your laptop, you go to present, and after you present, click on present, not join now. If you're presenting, like if you're presenting from a secondary device, then you want to make sure that share audio is clicked, and you can either do a tab or you can do your entire screen. Then this is another option, is that when you're actually in the Google Meet and you want to start presenting, go with present now and then click this, but that really doesn't have anything to do with the sound. It's about like, it's for video and animation.
Well, and if you use that one, that tab, you have to make sure that if you're using two devices, like I have to turn off my Meet volume, like where I'm speaking, because otherwise they get feedback and it's very echoey. So when you use the tab best for video and audio, you have to make sure that in the Meet that you're presenting from, your mic is not on, or they will get feedback.
Okay, good to know. And then the other thing only other thing I could think of was like, if you're using Google Slides, I know it has to be a video that's embedded within, right? And so like you do that by going insert, click video, and then this would be the next screen that pops up down here. And you would click on the YouTube link, or you type it in, and then you'd select it and then press select down here, which you can, I heard from your Google Drive, embed from your Google Drive as well. But I feel like Teresa and I couldn't remember, and we feel like there were some issues around that. And so we weren't certain. So we thought you two might be able to kind of guide everybody on that.
For me, I find that sometimes for our announcements, the videos are embedded, and sometimes if the Wi-Fi is working well for everyone, I can just watch the video right there in the slideshow. But other times, if it's really glitchy and they're having trouble, I end up opening it up as a YouTube in a separate window. And sometimes that will solve the problem. It's like it's going through too many steps, perhaps, because it's going from my Google account to where I'm presenting it, and then the third step, the embedded video. So sometimes I think there's just too many steps and the Wi-Fi is not handling it well.
That makes sense.
So
Yeah.
sometimes I do just open it up fully as a YouTube video.
Yeah, I had to do that today, Jennifer. I had to do the exact same thing. I was trying to show a video in my slide that was embedded in my slideshow, and then it didn't work. So I just had to open it up in a new tab and just share that tab. You'll know right away, I guess, right? It's just trial and error, but it's worked for the most part for me. Embedding the YouTube videos into the slide, it's worked. Like the timers work. I usually show a song of the day, which I can play right out of my slides. So it hasn't happened very often, but when it does happen, it'll just say either video unavailable because it can't catch up, and then you just have to go and present it in a different slide, or a different tab. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good tip then, just to have that tab ready, and if it's not going to work, you can just press the tab and okay. Sweet. Okay, so this was another problem that came up today. So we talked about this yesterday. So if you want to view your class in the Google Meet, so you're not on a second device, you're on a single device. And so you click the three dots at the bottom right, this will come up. You'll click change layout, and then you click tiled, and it should look like a tiled. However, one teacher was working on this today, and it came up like this. It looked like a sidebar, because she was presenting and she didn't want to see just her screen. She wanted to see more students. And so do you have any suggestions for that?
So what we discovered is we downloaded the Chrome extension. It's called Grid View Fix for Chrome. So we downloaded the extension right on Google. Yeah, add-on extension. That's exactly
Okay.
what we did. So, and in that it'll come up as Grid View extension, and then you want to enable it. And then once you're in, exactly what you're showing here, grid view by default, and then when you're presenting your screen, it'll show up too, and you can see everybody's face. So it works really well.
Okay, so what I had said to her, I'm like, I don't know, like I don't have that problem, so I don't have include yourself in the grid.
Yeah, I don't normally do that because I'm showing my screen anyway, so my screen will pop up as like your screen is now presenting, and then I can see all the students though on the grid. So
Okay. Okay, perfect. So it's that extension add-on. If you
Yeah.
have, it's going to cause a problem. And so then this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so someone asked yesterday if we have teacher support. So the teacher supports, I think it was Diane, she was asking about, she went into the Google's, the elementary educator resource from the year before, and we had all the Google Suites and we had all the Seesaw videos, the hour-long videos. So you can get to that site by going to the blog, and it's the very first post right now. And you click on that link down here, on demand for student learning or for teachers. And then within there, these Google Suite and Google Meets are definitely 1 hour sessions. You can see them. If you're having Google issues or Seesaw issues, you can look for the whole hour. But the ones that are office hours, we didn't post in there the full hour, and that's what she was looking at. And so if you're looking for those, you can find them on YouTube. It's LKDSB Zoom PD, and all the videos of anything that's been recorded are in there. So you can go through and look for the longer versions of those short office hour segments there. And then don't forget the student IT support. That's for parents. Jennifer clarified for us yesterday, parents need to clarify or need to be ones to send the email so that it's detailed enough that they can understand what the problem is. And then also we need to have, there has to be like what the subject is, what the problem is. And then if it's a iPad from the school, like also have the number on it. Is that correct, Jennifer?
Yeah, it's more that if students try to respond to this, they seem to leave out important information, at least the younger ones. Whereas even parents, when I've talked to them and I've said, well, make sure you tell them it's a personal device or it's a school device and it's an iPad or it's a Chromebook, because otherwise you just get they can't fix it if they don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So they just has to be enough information provided so that it can actually, so that the IT can actually give the support that's needed, because otherwise, if you just say there's a problem, that's not enough.
Yeah. Okay, so any other questions from anybody? Like nothing's come up in the chat. Okay, so we'll go, here's the bit.ly that's going to have the links that things that we've talked about. Some of them are already there, but I know I'm gonna try and find the one thing in Darren's classroom.
Yeah, it's right under my materials, Sally. I'll email you about it though after the video.
Okay. Not sure what happened there. Okay. So I've added, I know Jennifer, you offered for emails. Are you okay, Darren, if anybody emails a question?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Jennifer, I don't know if you're planning to come tomorrow. I know you had agreed to Monday and Tuesday. So thank you very much for all of your support. It's been very useful. And Darren, thank you for joining us today as well. And
No
look
problem.
forward to having you join us tomorrow. So if you have any questions, you can email any of us. And that's it. I think we're done.
Thanks, everyone. So
Okay.
Darren, you'll be able to do that tomorrow, then?
Yep.
Show us your, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think
Yeah, no
that'll be
problem.
Very helpful.
I think Diane said thank you. So that must have answered her question about the sound, because I know she was asking about it today. All right, guys. Well, have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, say bye.
Take care, guys.